Hi, Sai Karate Illuminati, this is Noah, and today I'd like to take a little time to address these two techniques and kind of go over why they aren't O-Soto-Gari. So the first clip is a demonstration that I did for the MMA club at Arizona State University, and it's an application for Naihanchi, specifically the crossing arm motion after the namigaeshi, the foot sweep. And this is one that I frequently get comments on how it's O-Soto-Gari when it isn't, and judoka love to point out that it isn't, in my experience. And the second clip is an older video of my late sensei teaching an application for Naihanchi Nidan, specifically the supported arm to the dropping elbow, which has a knee lift before it. And that one I get less comments about it being O-Soto-Gari, but they still come up. Now, to understand why they're not O-Soto-Gari, you really need to take a closer look at a proper O-Soto-Gari. So that's what we're going to take a look at now. The biggest thing with O-Soto-Gari is that in order to be O-Soto-Gari, a major outer reap, you have to be reaping the leg. And that means actually swinging through it to remove it from the ground. That is the key feature of O-Soto-Gari. If you're not reaping the leg, as in completely cutting it out from the person with a big sweeping motion of your leg, it really doesn't count as O-Soto-Gari. Not a good one, anyway. And both of the techniques in my clips don't do this. They do, in some ways, resemble it, but they're not actually performing that action. Now, in looking at the first clip, we do have a very similar approach to the kazushi, right? We're still trying to turn and tilt them back toward an angle. But instead of reaping the leg, we're actually displacing it sideways with our stance. So there's no reaping action happening. What's actually occurring is you are stepping between their legs from behind them so that essentially they just can't have a leg there anymore. You could consider it a reap, but in terms of judo, it isn't really. Because again, reaping suggests this scything motion where you're cutting something out from underneath a person, and really you're just stepping down behind them. Now in the second clip, the kazushi is actually very different. Rather than trying to turn someone back into an angle, what's happening is lifting the chin and trying to drive the head up and then backward and down. And that is a very different mechanic than you're going to see with an O-Soto-Gari. But in addition to that, there's no reaping action with the leg. What's happening is that he's stepping down behind it, and there's often a bump incorporated into that to kind of help pull that leg off the ground a little bit. But the main reason that it's happening is so that they can't step back to adjust for having their head pushed back that way. You're essentially blocking their leg rather than reaping it. So in pure judo terms, neither of these qualify as an O-Soto-Gari. Yes, you are stepping to the outside of them, and you are in some way using your near leg to prevent their leg from keeping them standing. But the way that you're doing it is different. And for people outside of judo, that distinction may not really matter. But when I was training in judo, it was a big deal to be able to identify and properly perform the techniques, because if you did them slightly differently, they became different techniques entirely. For example, you may consider Haraigoshi, Yama-arashi, and Ashiguruma to be the same throw. They look almost identical. If you're not somebody who very specifically trains in judo, you're not going to be able to tell those throws apart very well. And you would be tempted to call all three of them probably Haraigoshi because that's the more popular throw. But in judo terms, they are three distinctly different throws. And that's kind of the same thing we're looking at here. There's a lot of similarities, but there are differences that make it not O-Soto-Gari.